The main thing to remember, y'all, the most important thing that we can do in this life is believe the gospel of Jesus Christ. Moreover, brethren, I declare unto you the gospel which I preached unto you, which also ye received, and wherein ye stand, by which also ye are saved, if ye keep in memory what I preached unto you, unless you have believed in vain. For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received, how that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he was seen of Cephas, and then of the 12. After that he was seen of above 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep. After that he was seen of James, then of all the apostles. All these people, for the most part, died for what they believed because they saw something no one could take away from them. This is not just the gospel, this is the truth. Alright, so seriously, this is funny how this stuff starts. I was looking up Hal Turner, and it says that the Israeli war with the Hezbollah will start tonight. So, there you go on that note. So I go to the Drudge Report to see what's in the news because I'd recorded something. I'm releasing a video today. Imagine that, it's been a while. So I like to look through the news so I can see what the theater is. So I get here to this New York cover and I'm like, why is she sitting on a coconut? And that's where this started. So I'm just sitting there staring at this thing, and all these people are down here waving at her. Obama's waving at her. Let's see how deep this gets. I haven't even looked down here. Obama's waving at her. Schumer's fighting for her. I can't tell whether she's doing devil horns. Biden's giving her the thumbs up. We got a 666 from Beyonce. And anyway, so I'm like, why is she sitting on a coconut? That makes no sense. And Camelot, so they're saying basically it's hers, that America belongs to her. But the coconut, so I'm like, there's got to be some sort of esoteric meaning here. So I looked this up, and I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, the coconut has worked its way into religious beliefs and ceremonies. The 3 small holes or eyes visible on a coconut fruit have given them an association with Shiva. You know, the destroyer, the one outside of CERN, that Obama was on the cover of a magazine also dancing like. One of the divine trinity principal gods of Hinduism, normally portrayed with a third eye in the center of its forehead between its eyebrows. In certain Hindu rituals, a coconut is also used symbolic substitute for one's ego and sacrificed by smashing it against a hard surface. This symbolizes the subjugation of this ego to the divinity. So, she's sitting on top of the coconut, meaning the coconut belongs to her. So, is the coconut the ego of America? And if you look at the way she's sitting, that's the Shiva the Destroyer dance. Add 2 more arms on each side and 2 more legs. She's doing the Shiva dance. So all these dreams about us leaving when she's president. Alright. I'm not a teacher, but I have a lot of information because I do a lot of research. So I was curious, how long it takes to make new wine. Because I've really equated this new wine thing. I believe that when it says in Revelation, don't harm the oil of the wine, he's talking about the ones he has marked. The wine being the tribulation saints, and the oil being the 144,000, the Jews. Or something of that nature. So anyway, I've done a lot of study, and I was looking for the new wine because I really believe that's when we're leaving. And I come across a study that says everything that I've ever found as far as my research. So it was the perfect teaching tool. So I put it to where my browser would read the article, and I recorded it the guy you can tell is a works Christian. I left out the part where he's explaining his theology, and I brought y'all to the research that I had found as far as how the rapture connects with the new wine. And it's very, very encouraging, those of y'all that take the time to watch it. Also, I'm going to put the links to the t-shirt shop we created. We can do any of those designs on anything you want, from coffee mugs to posters to whatever you want. The money's going towards this issue I've got coming up in Georgia. I also need an attorney, and that way all this would go away. I just have no way to fight it. I forgot a GoFundMe, and I've also got a Cash App. And I also want to start some sort of homeless outreach, because I need something to do till he comes, but I really don't think we have very long to worry about any of this, to be totally honest with you. But that video is coming next.
To be ready for the appointed time. My hypothesis. I have been studying intently for almost a year and have developed a hypothesis that I will share below. I am presenting it as a hypothesis because I am not so arrogant as to believe that my understanding is infallible. That said, I believe this hypothesis is strong enough that everyone needs to wake up. I may be off in the exact timing, but I believe all will be completed within the next decade. In any event, we should be prepared for his coming at any moment, because we can all die at any moment. I believe that the woman, Israel, will give birth, rapture, at a Pentecost, and then the birth pains will begin in earnest. In particular, I don't believe we have yet seen the actual birth pains described by Matthew, wars and rumors of war. The question the wise must discern is, when is the true anniversary of Pentecost and what year this will all go down? I believe the true Pentecost is the 1st of Avenue, aka the first day of the 5th month, and that 2023 or 2024 are the most likely years, leaning slightly toward 2023. You would think that finding the 1st of Avenue would be easy, but I assure you the evil one has worked a great deception over the past 2,000 years. My hypothesis is that everything could start as soon as August 2nd, 2023, but maybe a year later, in 2024. Supporting this hypothesis will require unpacking a lot of studies. I have shared this up front because you may not have much time to buy your oil. What follows is the evidence I base my hypothesis upon. I will start with evidence for the year, then narrow it down to evidence for the summer, and finally, evidence for the exact feast day, and then the precise day as appointed from the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. Jubilee. Yeshua quoted Isaiah chapter 61 in Luke chapter 4 when he read, "The Spirit of Yahuwah is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free the oppressed, to proclaim the year of Yahuwah's favor." Then Yeshua says the prophecy has been fulfilled in their hearing. The language that reads, "to proclaim liberty to the captives and freedom to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of Yahuwah's favor," describes a Jubilee year which is supposed to happen every 49 years after 7 Sabbath, Shemitah years. Yeshua stopped reading just before the part of Isaiah that reads, "and the day of our Elohim's vengeance," because that was for his second coming. In effect, we can eliminate 98% of all potential years for his return if we can identify the proper Jubilee years. We know that the year Joshua crossed the Jordan was a Sabbath year and that the first Jubilee would follow the 7th Sabbath year. Therefore, if we can identify the year of crossing, then we will greatly narrow down our search. There are many different theories about potential years for crossing, but I have found 1406 BC to be the most aligned. There are many great YouTube videos that support the argument that Amenhotep II was the pharaoh of Egypt during the Exodus. He reigned from 1450 BC to 1425 BC. We know the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years after the negative report from 10 of the 12 spies around the grape harvest, a year and a half after Exodus, and that they crossed the Jordan in the first month. This puts the crossing between 1408 BC and 1383 BC. Of all the estimates for the timing of the crossing I found, only 1406 BC and 1407 BC fit the timeline. Since those years would represent the Sabbath years, the anniversary of the Jubilee would be 1405 BC or 1406 BC, and 70 jubilees from those years is 2024 or 2025. 70 is an auspicious number for those who study biblical numerology, especially the 70 sevens of Daniel. Jubilees are announced at the Feast of Trumpets the year before they take effect. I believe that the fall of 2023 or 2024 will announce the Jubilee at the Feast of Trumpets, and that the Jubilee will commence in earnest around Passover 2024 or 2025. The Jubilee would be the first year of 7, with the seventh being a year of rest. So this means 2024, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30 would be significant years during which Yahuwah's 70th week of Daniel can unfold, and Passover of 2031 would be the 2000-year anniversary of the crucifixion. Messiah 2030 is a fabulous documentary that outlines the countless prophecies that point to the return of Yeshua 2 days, or 2000 years, later to rule for 1000 years. I happen to believe that 2031 is the first year after the tribulation, based upon a solar eclipse on Passover in 31 AD, when no other year around that time had a solar eclipse. So we now have two witnesses, the Jubilee year and the 2000-year prophecies, which frame a 7-year window for Daniel's 70th week, which must be completed before Yeshua's return. Summer Rapture. It is well known that his appointed times are tied to his feast days. For thousands of years, he has repeatedly done all of his work on the anniversaries of his appointed times. Therefore, we should watch and inspect every feast day to identify the likely candidates. I believe it will occur at harvest time in the summer. 2 men will be in the field. 1 will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill. 1 will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch. Yeshua. There are only 2 times people are in the field, planting or harvesting. The appointed times for the summer occur after Passover and before the Feast of Trumpets. That leaves Shavuot, Pentecost, the 9th of Avenue, and 15th of Avenue as dates of interest, along with any full moons in the mist. The second coming has been compared to a harvest of wheat, and Yeshua has been described as treading the winepress. This points to a harvest when wheat has been harvested and dried, ready for the mill, and when the grapes are ready for making new wine. Pentecost clues. But others mocking said, "They are filled with new wine." But Peter, standing with the 11, lifted up his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and give ear to my words. For these people are not drunk, as you suppose, since it is only the 3rd hour, 9 a.m., of the day. But this is what was uttered through the prophet Joel." Acts chapter 2 verses 13 to 16 ESV. This verse clearly indicates that Pentecost occurs after new wine is available, because this is what they were accused of being drunk on. If you go to the verse in Joel that Peter was talking about in Acts 2 and then go back a few verses, you will find the following context. "The threshing floors shall be full of grain, the vats shall overflow with wine and oil." Joel chapter 2 verse 24. This is in a chapter talking about the coming day of Yahuwah, and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. "And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. So the angel thrust his sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God." Revelation chapter 14 verse 18. We now have several verses from the Old and New Testaments that link Pentecost to the grape harvest, and the grape harvest to the coming day of Yahuwah, and the wrath of our Elohim. When is the true Pentecost? Doing some research, I discovered that the grape harvest usually starts around the beginning of August in Israel, but this appears to be in conflict with the traditional timing of Pentecost, being about 50 days after Passover. The scripture that gives us the timing of Pentecost is found in Leviticus. "And you shall count unto you from the morning after the Sabbath, from the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. Even unto, from, the morning after the 7th Sabbath shall you number, count, 50 days. KJV. This can be understood to count until the end of the 7th Sabbath and then count 50 days. Typically people assume these are redundant instructions measuring in both weeks and days. This apparent redundancy is a result of our corrupted understanding of the calendar. Notice that this counting will take you from Passover until the end of summer, around the time of the grape harvest. Pentecost rapture parallel to Moses and golden calf. As Moses descended from the mountain after 40 days, he turned to Joshua, whose name means salvation, similar to Yeshua, who was by Moses' side, and said the following: It is not the voice of them that begin the battle, nor the voice of them that begin of defeat, but the voice of them that begin of new wine do I hear. Exodus chapter 32 verse 18 from the Septuagint. So when exactly did Moses come down the mountain to find the golden calf? The Israelites came to Mount Sinai on the third day of the third month. Tradition holds an alternative interpretation that it was the first day of the third month. However, we know that the new moon days were similar to Sabbath days. Therefore, it is doubtful that Yahuwah would have Israel travel on the first day of the month, which would have been a worship day. This yields an alternative interpretation of Exodus chapter 19 verse 1, which totally undermines the tradition that Shavuot is when the 10 commandments were given in the voice of our Elohim, because it would be 52 days from Passover. Given Israel was given the commandments verbally on 3/8, 8th day of third month, they knew they were expected to celebrate a feast day. Therefore, it is reasonable to expect that the golden calf incident is evidence of a legitimate feast day and not a random party. On the 8th day of that month, a Sabbath day, there was a holy convocation where all of Israel heard Yahuwah speak the 10 commandments. Then the next day, Moses built an altar and read the commandments, and Israel agreed to follow all that was written. Then Moses goes up the mountain with the elders, where they eat and drink in the presence of Yahuwah, and a cloud comes down and covers them for 6 days. Then Yahuwah calls Moses up higher for 40 days. Then Yahuwah tells Moses to go down because the people are going astray. It is at this point that Moses notices that they have begun the feast. It appears the Israelites attempted to hold the feast of first fruits, Shavuot, in gathering and to use a golden calf as an intermediary to worship Yahuwah, when they thought Moses might never return. Do you notice a similar pattern with people today who say, Yeshua is a long time coming? What makes you think he will ever return? Rapture and judgment parallels of golden calf. Then stood Moses at the gate of the camp, and said, Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me. Then all the sons of Levi came to him. This is clear, rapture, language. The sons of Levi are his priests. And 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9 says, You, the church, are a royal priesthood. Do not grumble so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door, gate. James chapter 5 verse 9. Revelation chapter 6 verses 5 to 6 also shows the connection with the 4 first fruits. When he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature saying, Come. I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he, the judge, who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard something like a voice in the center of the 4 living creatures saying, A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not damage the oil, anointed, and the wine, spirit-filled. Revelation chapter 6 verses 5 to 6. First notice that all 4 elements of first fruits are mentioned: barley, wheat, wine, and oil. A denarius is about a day's wages, and a quart of wheat is enough to make 1 loaf of bread. This is a clear hyperinflation and mass starvation event, because a day's wages is not enough to cover the cost of food for a family. Based on my own knowledge of economics, I would say we are not very far away from global hyperinflation. Neither do men pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will spill, and the wineskins will be ruined. Instead, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. Matthew chapter 9 verse 17. It occurs to me that we must get our new bodies, new wineskin, to receive the new wine. The perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal with immortality. You will never guess what the very next thing that happens after the parable of wineskins. While Jesus was saying these things, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him. My daughter has just died, he said, but come and place your hand on her, and she will live. There seems to be a clear relationship between new wine, wineskins, and raising people from the dead. If one follows the connection back to the spies Moses sent into the promised land. Upon their return, first fruits, Pentecost, 2 of them brought a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes which they carried on a pole between them. Note the Messiah imagery of grapes, branch on a pole between 2 thieves. When 10 of the 12 spies lacked faith in Yahuwah, provision, he condemned all men who were 20 or older to die over 40 years in the desert. Tradition records that every year on the 9th of Avenue, Moses commanded the men to dig graves and sleep in them. That night many would die. After 40 years, they all dug graves, but no one died. They thought they may have had the day wrong, so they slept in the graves for 7 days, and no one died. The curse was lifted, and they could enter the promised land. So we have another parallel with people coming out of the graves on the 9th of Avenue and having confirmation of permission to enter the promised land on Tuba, the 15th of Avenue. Note that the 9th of Avenue is the anniversary of destroying the first and second temples. Last but not least, we have Matthew chapter 26 verse 29, where Yeshua speaks at the Last Supper the night before Passover. I tell you, I will not drink this wine until the day I drink the new wine with you in my Father's kingdom. HCSB. So, there you have it. The next time we see him will be with new wine. Notably, he says he will not drink of it because it is forbidden to partake of the new barley, wheat, wine, and oil, nor any other first fruits until after the sacrifice was made. Calendar chaos. To fully understand our Creator's timing, we need to know his calendar because different calendars will produce different dates on the pagan Gregorian calendar. There is much dispute about the true Hebrew calendar, including critical details such as 1. When does the week start? Sunday, Monday, or the second day of the month? 2. When does the month start? Dark moon, first sliver, or full moon? 3. When does the year start? Moon in at Virgo's feet or crescent relative to equinox. 4. When is there a 13th month? Fixed 19-year cycle or signs in the moon and stars. 5. When does the day start? Sunset or sunrise? And 6. What hours are sacred on Sabbath days? Daylight only or 24 hours? Getting to the complete answer to all of these questions is beyond the scope of this post, but there is ample documentation at the Creator's calendar. My conclusion on the calendar is a very minority opinion, but I ask you to accept it on faith for the rest of this article and then test my findings for yourself. Here is my conclusion. 1. The day starts at sunrise. 2. New moon day is on the first of the month. 3. The first week starts on the second day of the month. 4. Sabbaths are the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th of the month. 5. The month starts the morning after the full moon is sighted. 6. The year starts when the full moon is below Virgo's hand toward her feet, below Specca. 7. Sabbath is only from sunrise to sunset. And 8. The new moon is the full moon. This calendar is consistent everywhere on earth and with facts in the Bible that I find almost indisputable, and I will share a couple of them with you now. 1. Blow the trumpet at the new moon, at the full moon, on our feast day. Psalm chapter 81 verse 3. 2. For several months in a row in Exodus, the weekly Sabbaths fall on the same day of the month. This is a mathematical impossibility with a 7-day recurring Sabbath. 3. The Bible talks about new moon celebrations where an order of magnitude more sacrifices are expected than on the Sabbath days or work days. 4. The east gate is to be opened on Sabbaths and full moons but closed on work days. However, if the weeks move relative to the month, we have a conflict on whether the door should be open or closed. 5. After 321 AD, Jews had to introduce the rules of postponement, which made the lunar appointed feast days subordinate to the Roman continuous weekly schedule. These rules move Yahuwah's feast days without any biblical justification to resolve serious conflicts that occur when Saturdays or new moons fall on incompatible days, such as Passover preparation day. 6. The Julian calendar in use by the Romans in Yeshua's day was an 8-day calendar. And 7. Saturday was the first day of the early Roman calendar and Sunday was the second. If you are like me, you probably have never really heard or thought much about new moon celebrations nor the implications of the appointed times associated with them. I always assumed the 7-day week has been uninterrupted since the dawn of time. However, Rome changed from an 8-day week and adopted a 7-day week in 321 CE by the decree of Emperor Constantine. There are numerous other problems with the 7-day continuous cycle when you consider that there are no signs in the sun, moon, or stars as a witness. This means that the start and end of the weekly cycle is entirely a tradition of men and has often changed by government decree. Asteroid Apophis on Passover 2029. In June 2004, astronomers discovered an asteroid the size of a skyscraper that they thought could hit the Earth on April 13, 2029. Since then, NASA has claimed that it will miss us, but Apophis will still come closer to Earth than many of our own satellites. That said, if such a continent-destroying asteroid were to be on a collision course, I doubt NASA would actually disclose that information to the public. What are the odds that such an asteroid would arrive on Passover? Granted, it only arrives on Passover if you are following the calendar I believe our Elohim intended. But wait, there is more. If you follow the path of Apophis through the constellations, it mirrors the language of Revelation as it flows from the rider on the horse with a bow, past the tail of the dragon, through an eagle in midair, into the cup filled with fury, by the sickle of the harvest to arrive at the head of the dragon at its closest approach. If it does hit, it would align with language that describes a mountain falling from the sky, opening the bottomless pit, and smoke reducing the brightness of the sun, moon, and stars by 1/3. From the bottomless pit comes demon locusts that torment the rebellious for 5 months, which would land perfectly on the Feast of Tabernacles. Apophis was created at the beginning of time and was appointed to be here on this exact day. Even if it doesn't hit, it is a fascinating sign in the stars. Once again, if it were on a path to hit Earth, the propaganda arm of the government would put every effort into hiding this fact from the masses, while the government would be spending like there is no tomorrow. Furthermore, it would be nothing for Yahuwah to nudge it, considering historical interference with the sun and moon. Conclusion. The appointed times are important to our Creator. He hates our feast days. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs, for I will not hear the melody of thy viols. Amos chapter 5 verses 21 to 23. This verse talks about the people in the time leading up to the day of the Lord. It is time we all wake up and ask ourselves whether we are celebrating his feasts on his appointed days, or are we following the traditions of men. O Yahuwah, my strength, my fortress, and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. Jeremiah chapter 16 verses 19 to 21. It is time to stop celebrating the pagan holidays of Halloween, Christmas, and Easter, and also stop following the corrupt Gregorian calendar and instead seek out the Creator's calendar with prayer. The summer of 2023 is the last summer before the year of Jubilee, and the year of Jubilee is the first of the last 7 years before the 2000-year anniversary coming of Yeshua HaMashiach. If we don't see some major prophecies being fulfilled over the next 7 years, then it is unlikely any of us will see his coming in our lifetime. This is because the next likely Jubilee year is after 2070. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Luke chapter 21 verse 36.